Mississippi. Let's talk about corrections first of all. I had a interview last week with Mr. Horan, who had this bill as far as the parole board to actually start a new, I guess, government agency and pull the parole board away into its separate agency. You were on vice chairman of corrections in the Senate. Your thoughts on this? Were you privy of this or part of this? Or
Well, Chairman Horan, of course, the things they do in the House, they'll send over to us, and conversations. I talk with the chairman, on a regular basis on correction issues. But on that particular issue, we've not, talked deeply about it. I listened to your interview with him, and I understand the concern is growing government, and we certainly don't want to do that as conservatives. What we do want to do is make sure that we operate a parole and probation service that is focused on reducing recidivism. And, if that's better accomplished with a true focus on probation and parole and not incarceration, and that those need to be divided, we can certainly look at it, but there's the economics of it that certainly are concerning.
Because I think last year we had, I was reading some information on this one. Last year we had about 600 prisoners who became eligible for parole.
It was actually a few more than that. I'm not sure where they picked that number up with the parole bill that was passed and signed by the governor last year. People who became eligible, and that doesn't mean they were released, was higher than that. But it may have been eligibility that will come in year 2 or 3 or 4. In other words, it's not actually been active yet. But the parole board processed a lot of applications. And I will say this for, of course, Steve Pickett, who is now retired, was the former president. And I've talked with several members of the parole board, and they've invited me to come and spend some time with them while they're having hearings. And I want to do that because we do have a system that people get lost in the shuffle sometimes, and we don't understand, or we're not getting the full picture of when someone is released on parole or they're released on earned time, some type of meritorious earned time, and those are two different releases. And there is a position that would say the parole board should review all earned release time to make sure that just everything's calculated properly. We want to be fair, but we don't want people that are not serving the sentence that they were given.
Yeah. We're kind of caught between just the historic rise in crime, and the city of Jackson itself is making news across the nation, unfortunately in a bad way. And also a move at the same time to help out people who are in prison. So it's a kind of a juxtaposition of battling two things at one time, which it's not good timing. But I can understand it. We've got around 19,000 people that we've incarcerated in the state. And the ones that can go out, can rehabilitate themselves, do what they want, what they need to be done, and they've done everything that has asked for them. And if they get caught in the red tape, it is demoralizing. So I think that's where, in my understanding, there's about 20 bills that deal with the crime in this, I should say, the parole system, or with the prison system in the House committee.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. And again, looking at what we did last year, that was the big lift as far as eligibility. And we were very cautious about these violent crimes. But as you said, focused on those things. And then, let's face it, we're often treating the symptoms, not the real problem. The real problem in this country and often in our cities is the breakdown of a traditional home. It's the breakdown of community, the support structure. And ultimately, you have children who are not raised in a manner that there's accountability. And it's sad. But then ultimately, if they end up in the Department of Corrections, as a state, we've taken possession of that person. They're put in our custody, and we need to do the best we can to correct and train and educate and rehabilitate so that hopefully that person will have a more profitable life once they get out. And that's the goal: reducing recidivism and re-encounters with law enforcement. We don't want our law enforcement people having to rearrest and rearrest.
Senator Daniel Sparks, my guest, Vice Chairman of Corrections. Well, You look at what's going on in the city of Jackson. Last week, Charlie and Brandon on C Spire text line said, years ago I ran, because we were asking, how in the hell do you stop some of this stuff going on in Jackson? And one of the things that the police chief said, or somebody said, well, we need more basketball goals or whatever. We tried that with midnight basketball. That's probably going to be a good recruiting center for gangs in a neighborhood. That's not what we need as basketball goals. Years ago, he said, I ran a JPD street crime unit in downtown Jackson area. I ran 5 two-man patrol cars. All I did was old-fashioned police work. We got out of the cars and we did field interviews on suspicious activity, which is perfectly legal. We arrested people who had warrants. We interrupted a lot of crimes in progress. In just a 6-week period, we had a 400% decrease in crime in downtown Jackson. The solutions are simple, and I agree 100% with Charlie. Well, when we think about things like stop and frisk.
You allow people to be comfortable in doing wrong, and you see the smash and grabs that we have seen across some of our more progressive large cities, that people are just walking into the drugstore, and there's videos that are being posted all the time where someone just walks in, fills up a basket, and walks out, and no one can do anything, or if they do, they're met with violence. And when you fail to have that level of accountability, you get a breakdown in society, and it's pushed by often, and again more so in these large progressive cities, by DAs who make the statement and who blame the police. And at the end of the day, they're a source of the problem.
And it is exacerbated with the increase in crime and less police on the streets. We understand that, and it's just a perfect storm. I need to ask you as a noted attorney, too, because State Auditor Shad White said he believes more judges, possibly a separate judicial district, could be the answer to the capital city's struggle with violent crimes. And number one, in the state of Mississippi, we've got to tackle that unit or that problem in Jackson. I understand it's bad elsewhere, but we are making national news about a hellhole in the capital city. Last year ended in the deadliest in the city's history. Jackson's homicide rate per capita ranked highest in the nation among larger cities, according to a lot of the studies that are out there. I want to ask you about this, and what do you think about the idea? Because it's not a new idea. It's been talked about before. I did read in the last part of this story, I think it was on WLBT, they said the cost of this may be the thing that's stopping at $10 million. And I thought in a budget, White said it could cost $10 million or more for judges, bailiffs, and resources to expand as what is already in Hinds County. But I thought $10 million and a $1 billion budget, more than $1 billion, is not that much money for a problem that is this bad for the entire state. We'll talk about that and ask Senator Daniel Sparks his assessment of this as far as a judicial district. Back after. Let's take a little time to talk about this. And is that something that would work out as far as Jackson's concerned? Because we had this horrendous story last week, and I know this is not so much the court system as it is the police department, but this guy just got out on bail accidentally. He shouldn't. Well, he didn't pay anything. He just got out. I'm not sure if what the bail cost was, or did he have one? And then he allegedly committed murders after he was out again. But we've got so many people just caught up in the system. Is there another way? And if you start looking at this, maybe Shad White is right. He believes more judges, possibly a completely separate judicial district, could be the answer to the capital city struggles with violent crimes. Your thought as a noted attorney?
Well, I think a couple things. One is Commissioner Tyndall has been tasked with working in the capital district and potentially expanding that district, looking at what can we do. Should there be a 10th troop with the Mississippi Highway Patrol and it be based in that capital district? Should there be a judicial district? Should there be some support? If I'm not mistaken, we did have some assistance come into the Hinds County court system to help relieve a backlog and relieve several backlogs of cases. And that was one of the things with the ARPA monies is that we had the ability to come in and try to clear backlogs. Now, in certain districts, I'm in the 1st District, John Weddle's our DA, and they've continued to have trials and move cases forward even during COVID, but certain districts probably have not. So I think that's part of it. Of course, we have a newer DA in Hinds County, I think, that's trying to work through prior issues he's had. But I do think you look at it and see, will that help us, as we move through the system, as we move the cases. So, I think we have dabbled with that, and it may be that there's a level of permanency that needs to come with it.
When you say expand the judicial district, what are we talking about as far as the footprint? How much are you talking about in as far as the Jackson city limits itself?
Well, I think that'll be probably more better suited for the folks that represent, Hinds County and Jackson. But I just know that we've had a request for, and I think the governor even mentioned in his State of the State, to request to double the size of the Capitol Police Force. And in my conversations with Commissioner Tyndall, that he sees that level of commitment, and he's been tasked to try to help deal with this in conjunction with the city of Jackson, because we have people working for JPD that are trying real hard, that are outmanned and sometimes outgunned, and so we want to assist them. But at the end of the day, we've got to bring a level of accountability and safety back to the streets. And one of the things that when we talk about rehabilitation and reentry, we need to make sure that we're grasping technology. Today with telephones and the trackability and GPS, there's so much that we could do that would help our probation officers and police officers. And maybe somebody who, is out, it kind of narrows it down. If you're in the wrong places doing the wrong things, maybe you shouldn't be out, whether you were granted parole or probation. And I hope that we are able to do that, to let the people who are doing well have a level of freedom, and the people who are not doing well to have closer monitoring, because that's the key. If we can focus on the places where the problems are, where the violence is, I think that helps us across the board.
We got to have the help of the people that are incarcerated, too. And we mentioned this because I think last week when the commissioner was on Burl Cain, I don't think we've had another time in since I've been doing this for a long time that we've had a commissioner of corrections and a legislative body that are more than willing to put these programs out there and fund them. And there are so many out there. We talked with the guys from, the head of Prison Industries. They're doing everything they can to get that up to where offer some opportunities for those people who apply or who qualify to get some training. The commissioner's got, my God, I think he just started a barber school or starting a barber school, but welding schools and everything else. So the opportunities are there. I don't. What else can we do?
Well, and I think it is buy-in. It's also when someone comes into the Department of Corrections at intake, we need to be moving them to CMCF to process, to get a case plan, and focus at that point maybe why somebody's there and who we can be successful with. We have great community colleges across our state that are willing to be partners in this. Chairman Juan Barnett, the chairman of corrections in the Senate, he has dropped legislation. We're trying to find partners in industry. The job market is so tight right now. We have one of the lowest labor participation rates in the country, but the job market is so tight that we have industries that are willing to partner with us, because if I'm going to train you how to weld, the first thing that comes to mind is potentially Ingalls on the coast will be willing to hire you. I've got a business in Prentiss County, New Way Trucks. They located here. They had 100 jobs. They've expanded over another 100. They basically do welding. We have people that will hire and potentially help us with this monitoring, because if I'm going to work every day and my employer will vouch for that, and my employer is willing to make payroll deductions for me to pay my fines or my restitution, then why do I need to go see a probation or parole officer if all I'm going to do is go in and verify that I was at work and then I miss a day of work? So I think that's a good idea. And again, if we need to use technology to help us monitor the people that are, I guess you would say, low risk monitoring, so that we can really focus on the people that are high risk.
Speaking of that job market, the federal government is setting up a pilot program that would allow people as young as 18 years old to drive semi-trucks across state lines. From my understanding, an 18-year-old, 19-year-old can drive and have a commercial license, but they can't cross state lines, and I think that's that federal government is considering that in response to a national supply chain crisis, also a shortage of qualified truck drivers. There are some people who are against this, but then again, and we've even talked to some of the trucking folks like KLLM. Their policy would be not to hire an 18-year-old. So if this happens, it's not mandated. They could decide not to do that. Your thoughts?
And I think in looking, and you talk about the supply chain, our truck drivers, we've talked a lot about other people during the pandemic who were out doing certain things. Our truck drivers kind of get forgotten. they're what makes sure we have groceries on the shelf. It's not just the manufacturing; you've actually got to get it there. I think it's something certainly we can look at. If you've been inside of one of those trucks lately, it looks like a big computer, and who else is better able to deal with that than somebody that's younger? But, I've got actually a couple of bills this time in talking about the trucking industry. We've got a bill that will make someone who's in their private car, because we're dinging people who are in their private car, their pickup, a Prius, and they get a speeding violation, and they are then counted against their CDLs. And so we've got a bill that says, look, if you are driving a vehicle that doesn't require a commercial driver's license, that if you get a ticket in that, you're treated just like you or I. Because I find it interesting, we won't help a truck driver with a ticket because NHTSA says it's ticket masking, but yet I, as a lawyer and a legislator, would have the ability to go to driving school or could do something that would keep it off of my insurance. So I think that's not
a federal law. That's a state law.
It's, well, the federal, it gets blended. NHTSA, of course, this is one of those things where some federal entity says you're doing something and you're actually not. And I think this is a situation where we need to pass this law and we need to address it with the federal delegation. I did reach out to our Trucking Association people. I've reached out to our committee chairman, and I did reach out to Senator Wicker's office and let them know that we were trying to work with this legislation to help our CDL.